Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through today's topic. We are going to jump right in and crack open the DNA of a highly specialized, absolutely vital modern professional, the ISO 14001-2026 lead auditor. Today, we're focusing on the core competencies required for successful practice under this new standard. We're talking technical environmental management knowledge, interpersonal communication, leadership skills, and rock-solid evidence collection competencies. If you're involved in sustainability in any capacity, you already know how critical these audits are. But the 2026 standard, it has completely redefined the game. So let's break down exactly what this new breed of auditor looks like.
Now, you might be wondering, is environmental auditing still just a matter of checking compliance boxes? For decades, we've had this stereotype of an auditor, right? Someone showing up with a clipboard, looming over your shoulder, just hunting for some minor, trivial rule infraction. Well, we need to shatter that outdated myth right now. Under ISO 14001-2026, environmental management is absolutely not a static, box-ticking compliance exercise. It's a dynamic, highly strategic commitment.
So what is the true scope of the role today? A modern lead auditor is really a strategic enabler of organizational environmental integrity. They aren't just looking at the weeds, they are looking at the big picture. They are there to ensure that an organization's environmental objectives aren't just, some theoretical buzzwords slapped on a corporate website. They ensure these are actual operational practices that reduce environmental impacts and genuinely align with global sustainability expectations.
To get a full picture of this, we'll follow a quick roadmap today. We'll start with the modern mandate, then move into technical environmental knowledge, followed by interpersonal and leadership skills, then the mechanics of evidence, sampling, and classification, before finally combining all those competencies together.
Okay, let's dive into Section 1, the modern mandate, beyond the clipboard.
The old view of auditing was entirely reactive. It was all about finding out what went wrong after the fact, spotting those minor nonconformities. But the new reality, the 2026 standard, demands a totally different approach. It requires an evaluation of an organization's environmental governance maturity. The auditor has to assess strategic commitments to climate resilience. They have to evaluate life cycle thinking, literally from raw material extraction all the way to final disposal. And they have to measure actual continuous improvement. It's no longer just about catching a mislabeled recycling bin. It's about ensuring the entire corporate strategy is genuinely, fundamentally sound.
Which brings us to our second core competency. Section 2. Technical environmental knowledge, or as I like to call it, adopting the mind of a scientist.
A modern lead auditor simply has to possess a deeply interdisciplinary scientific foundation. It spans across a bunch of key domains. You need to understand greenhouse gas methodologies and climate adaptation. You have to be able to evaluate complex pollution control technologies, things like industrial scrubbers or catalytic converters, to know if they're actually working, not just turned on. You're assessing resource efficiency, biodiversity protection impacts, and, as we mentioned, life cycle perspectives. Bottom line, you literally cannot audit what you don't scientifically understand. Let's put this into perspective with a real-world scenario. Imagine you're an auditor walking into a massive manufacturing plant right on the coast. Under the old rules, you might just check their wastewater discharge permits and call it a day. But under ISO 14001-2026, relying on that hard technical climate science knowledge, you actually have to evaluate the facility's long-term flood risk mitigation and climate resilience strategies. You have to ask, is this plant prepared for extreme, changing weather events? That requires a serious working understanding of physical climate risks.
Moving right along to Section 3, interpersonal and leadership skills. Cultivating the empathy of a diplomat.
This is huge, guys. Trust is a critical factor in audit success. Why? Because environmental audits happen in complex and, let's face it, sometimes incredibly stressful organizational environments. If people feel threatened, they might provide incomplete information or, worse, outright conceal problems. If an auditee communicates defensively, the factual reliability of your entire audit completely collapses. The human-centered competencies directly, and I mean directly, dictate the accuracy of your technical findings.
Think about the difference in execution here. If a confrontational auditor spots a mistake, points a finger, and immediately writes up a nonconformity, what happens? The employee shuts down, walls go up. But an auditor who leads with emotional intelligence, they engage in dialogue. They use social awareness to realize, hey, this employee might just be nervous. By acting supportively instead of aggressively, they can actually uncover the root cause of the issue. They turn a tense inspection into a collaborative improvement process.
Picture this scenario. You're doing an audit, and you find that hazardous waste is being improperly segregated right there on the factory floor. Tensions are instantly high. Now, instead of just penalizing the worker on the spot, the emotionally intelligent auditor pauses and asks neutral, open-ended questions. Through that professional dialogue, you might actually discover that the training materials the worker received were completely contradictory. So, what looked like a careless employee mistake was actually a fundamental, systemic process design flaw. You are only going to find that out through effective, empathetic communication.
All right, on to the execution phase. Section 4, evidence, sampling, and classification. This is where you need the precision of a detective.
In the world of ISO 14001:2026, audit evidence isn't about your gut feeling or assumptions. It is verifiable fact, gathered through rigorous, objective assessment. And as an auditor, you have to perfectly balance two crucial things: sufficiency and appropriateness. Sufficiency means, quite simply, you've collected enough data to confidently make a claim. Appropriateness means the data you collected is actually highly relevant and of excellent quality. You absolutely need both to make a credible judgment.
So how does this detective work actually play out when you're in the field? First, you systematically collect evidence without any bias. Second, because let's be real, you can't check every single piece of paper in a massive, complex corporation, you apply what's called risk-based sampling. You focus your limited time on the specific areas with the absolute highest environmental risk. And finally, maintaining a healthy dose of professional skepticism, you classify any nonconformances based on their true systemic impact, not just their superficial symptoms.
Let's look at this methodology in action. Say you are evaluating an automotive plant's painting operations. A weak auditor might just look at an emissions report, see it looks fine, and move on. A true lead auditor triangulates the data. Sure, they look at the emissions report, but then they pull the maintenance logs for the filtration systems to see if they're actually being serviced. Then, they go talk to the employees operating those filters. If the maintenance records are suspiciously blank, but the emissions report is flawless, that professional skepticism kicks into high gear. That is what we mean by triangulation.
So how does this all fit together? Let's hit our final point. Section 5, combining competencies to build the ultimate auditor.
What we've looked at today is essentially the anatomy of a multidisciplinary powerhouse. A true ISO 14001 lead auditor blends three distinct personas. First, they need the technical, hard skills knowledge of a scientist to ensure everything is scientifically valid. Second, they need the interpersonal skills of a diplomat to navigate human complexities, build trust, and drive real cultural change. And third, they need the methodological rigor of a detective to guarantee their conclusions are objective and verifiable. When these three pillars lock together in real time, that's when an auditor can solve incredibly complex environmental challenges. So, we've unpacked the modern mandate, the hardcore science, the vital human element, and the strict investigative rigor required by the 2026 standard. The role of the lead auditor today is profound. It's no longer just about compliance. It's about driving genuine, lasting environmental resilience on a global scale. So, what does this all mean for you? The only question left is, are you ready to combine these competencies and lead that sustainable transformation yourself? Thank you so much for joining me in this explainer. I really hope this has empowered you to view environmental auditing in a completely new, dynamic light. Keep learning out there, and I'll see you next time.